Welcome to Spence Artworks. Today we're looking at a set of paints, the Holbein Artists Gouache range. Let's see what they can do. The Holbein Artists Gouache primary mixing set comes with five 15 ml tubes: magenta, yellow, cyan, white and black. Holbein's a Japanese company that's been around since 1900. I believe they named themselves after Hans Holbein the Younger, the famous Renaissance portrait painter. Over the years, they've built a reputation for really high quality artist paints, and their gouache is particularly well regarded. On the back, you'll find a colour mixing chart that shows you how you can take the three primaries, cyan, magenta, and yellow, and mix pretty much anything. It's actually the same way that printers work. You've probably heard of CMYK, cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. That's how printers produce all the colours in books and magazines and packaging. So this paint set is basically giving you the same tool set, just it's in tubes instead of cartridges. Inside, you'll get a leaflet. It's got a quick guide on mixing colours and mention of the Munsell colour system. That's basically a scientific way of organising colours by their hue, brightness, and saturation. Let's have a quick look at the tubes themselves. So we've got magenta, which is a single pigment, 3-star light fastness, and semi-transparent. The yellow is made from two pigments, a 2-star light fastness, so not quite as good, and also semi-transparent. Cyan is again a single pigment, 3 stars, semi-transparent once again. White is made from a single pigment, it's got 4 stars for light fastness and is semi-transparent. And then black is a single pigment, 4 stars, and is fully opaque. When I looked at this set, I did wonder about whether, if I ended up buying a larger set, if there would be duplication of some of the paints. But actually, the ones in this set of 5 do not have any overlap with the set of 12 that they offer. So potentially, if I did like them and I wanted to expand, that's the way I would do it. Alternatively, I might just buy the individual tubes of paints that I normally put into my color palette. I should say up front, I'm not expecting this to be a masterpiece. This is the first time I've ever used these Holbein gouache paints, and I've barely even tried other gouache, so it'll be interesting to see how it compares to watercolor or to water mixable oils, which I do use regularly. Really, this is just me playing around and seeing what happens with this little set. I really didn't take a very structured approach to this painting, so it's going to be interesting to try and record a voiceover, but I'll talk you generally through how I approached it, and we'll see how that plays out. Most of the time, I was just mixing things and jumping around rather than working to a particular plan. I started with yellow and black, which gave me a really dark greenish tone, and then I tried to find a balance from there. I don't normally use black when I'm painting in oils or watercolors, so it might be something I'll have to come to terms with if I keep using this gouache set. But I guess that's part of the fun, just experimenting. As I went along, I developed the greens by bringing in some other colors like the blue from the cyan. It was really just me watching how the colors shifted. And then later, I began adding in white, which felt a little unusual at first because I'd never do that in watercolor. But here it made the greens much more usable for lighter areas and highlights, even if it did give them more of a pastel look. The sky didn't really go where I was expecting it to go. I was hoping for that pale, almost white Scottish overcast look, but it came out a lot more dark and heavier than I expected. That probably just means I need to use a lot more white next time, or maybe thin the paint out and let it behave a little more like watercolour. I'll admit the foreground was pretty much an afterthought. I dragged some colour around to see what would happen with greens and yellows layered quickly. It's rough, but it gave me an idea of how they might behave. Towards the end, I tried a bit of dry brushing as well. That gave me some nice broken textures in the leaves and even in that foreground. It wasn't planned. I just thought, let's see what this looks like. And actually, I ended up quite liking the effect. So it's certainly not a polished painting, but as a first experiment, I have found it quite helpful. I've learned a bit about how these paints mix, how they behave when you try layering, and even something as simple as how useful white can be within the mixes. After the quick little tree test back in the studio, I carried the idea with me to Castle Campbell on a really warm Sunday morning. I was meeting up with a friend for a painting catch up and decided to keep the focus on a tree there as my main subject. It wasn't a deep focused painting session, more of a half painting, half chatting kind of morning, but it gave me the chance to spend more time with the Holbein set in a real setting. I didn't record the process, unfortunately, sorry about that, but I do have the finished piece that I can share. Because it was so warm, the paints dried out really quickly on the palette. I found myself regularly reactivating the gouache with a little spray bottle, which worked well, but also reminded me how important palette choice is with this set. Since the focus here is really on mixing and learning how the colours interact, I'd recommend using a decent sized palette to give yourself the space to mix freely. I only had the small wells of my portable painter with me, and I definitely wished I'd brought something bigger. Still, it was such a nice balance, experimenting with the paint, working into a tree study, and catching up with my pal in that beautiful setting. I probably should have structured this video differently, maybe even painting a color wheel, but that's not really my thing. I'd rather dive in and just see what happens. This is the first time I've done an art supply review, so if you're a subscriber and you enjoy this sort of thing, let me know. I'm happy to do some more, and hopefully next time I'll have something a bit more refined. But for now, here's my tree. Looking back at the set as a whole, I think this little box of 5 tubes really does give you a lot to work with. The primaries are strong, they mix cleanly, and even in this quick sketch, I was able to get a surprising range of natural colours. The white and black might take some practice to use confidently, but they definitely open up more options than I'd expect from such a small set. So while the painting is just a rough experiment, it does show how versatile these paints potentially could be. Now, it's probably worth saying that I wasn't sponsored or anything like that for doing this video. I just bought the paints because I wanted to try them, thought they'd be convenient to take when I go plein air painting. So, yeah, that's my thoughts on it. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you found it useful if you are considering getting some gouache paints and want to try them out for the first time. Thank you very much for watching, and until the next brush stroke, take care out there.